So we do not have a sponsor. If you want to help us keep the lights on, buy a t-shirt by going to the link in the bio. And don't forget to subscribe,
like, comment and spread the good news. God bless.
So welcome back to the Reclaim the Faith podcast. This is episode 25 and it's the New Year episode, isn't it, Danielle?
It is indeed, and we are excited for the year ahead.
And as per usual, this is produced by Medjugorje Studio, the best podcast studio in Ireland. Don't you get it, folks? This is the place to do a podcast. We love doing it here. The best people, and they provide every service. Medjugorje Studio. Happy New Year, James.
Happy New Year.
And yes, we have a very special guest today to bring us into the new year. Myself and Danielle, we're looking at this guest's sort of travel movements over the past many years of his life. I think I'm a traveller, by the way, Father. Don't know if you know, but I think you're a real traveller. The miles you've travelled. Hello.
Hello, hi there.
Hello.
Something came into my heart years ago that that line from St. Patrick's feast day says, "Go from your country and leave your family," and all the rest of it. So I ended up wondering. I'm a Dublin priest from Cork, right? I after my first parish in Aughrim Street, I was in Peru in a desert for 7 years. Shantytown, terrible, poor place. Beautiful to live there in a way, because this kind of the Spanish people, the Peruvian people have they're of great faith and great celebration, and everything is amazing for them. And then I was in 7 years in Liberia, West Africa, the rainforest. So it couldn't be more different from the desert. I was there and I saw again, amazing. The African people are very generous with God, with their time. The mass goes for 2 hours. They'll go longer. You can preach for an hour and they'd be delighted, They're very generous and very patient. They wait, and so poor. I went back there last year for 2 weeks and it was the happiest weeks of the year. It's just so lovely. Then I was in the Philippines, the last country, for 3 years working with Cenacolo community, opening up a house because President Rodrigo Duterte, had a shoot-to-kill policy on the addicted in the streets of Manila. One night alone, 32 young men were killed by squads, And it's like, where's the mercy? Where's anything,
What would Matt Talbot think of that?
Yeah, we went there, yeah. Sure, the Lord wept, And we went there to open a house for the Cenacolo community, which offers free, healthy, new life to lads who are destroyed by addiction. As they say to me, I was in hell. You know what I mean? That's how bad it is. Everything destroyed. Relationships, health, self-esteem, everything is gone. And to see them all learning to pray, learning the fact that God is on your side, feeling the help of God, feeling moments of grace, pouring out tears, making a real good confession, learning that Jesus is in there really in the Blessed Sacrament, coming to receive Jesus for the first time in years again after they prepare their hearts, and saying to themselves, this is a beautiful life. I can love my life again. I can start again. And to see them like that, that's miracles before your eyes, And to be able to be there and to say to the Lord, please make use of me here. It's one of the lovely things of my priesthood.
Maybe, Father, just, for maybe our audience members who don't know your background or where you've come from before you became a priest, can we maybe go to, where your journey started?
Yeah. I was completely lost. I wrote the other day in my journal, I was the most lost of all the lost, but I didn't believe in God, so I was an atheist from the age of 17. I played rugby in school, I liked the rugby, but I got thin as I grew older and couldn't play rugby anymore, etc. I lost a number of things and ended up, don't know what you describe, empty, whatever it was. And my mother used to say to me, I'll be praying for you. And I say, you can pray all you want, man, there's nobody there. And Many people were praying for me. And one day, alone in my room in an afternoon, 1977, I felt someone. I'd never in my life felt someone that I couldn't see. There was this invisible presence that I just was total, as sure as you're there now, this was real. And I was thinking, and then I felt in my heart like a whisper that said, "You have been away from me a long time." And it was so sweet. It was just like, I felt a kind of love that I'd never, my family, my grandparents, my girlfriend, anything, the love was much, much more, you know. Wow, it was like it knocked me over in a sense, and I thought, what do I do now, you know? And it seemed to say, "You'll never speak to me." So I was going to think, okay, what do I do? I knelt down. I said, Lord, I don't believe in you. Now, how could I not believe in this? And I said, what do I say? I said, "Our Father who art in heaven." I think and remembering it was years. I'd never said a real prayer in my life. I said parrot prayers, but not a real prayer. And as I said that, "Our Father," I felt such a joy to think, you really are my Father, Creator, wonderful, glorious, beautiful, forgiving. I felt like forgiven everything, you know. It's just the most, like if you say 60 seconds of heaven, you know, I just felt something was going into me, and it was healing all the wounds of whatever was had gone on. I wasn't even aware of, but that was the moment of my life, you know. I'd give anything to experience that again. I was 22, my life began again. Wow. I could just say thank you a million times for that, you know. I just wanted to, the wonder of go back into that room again, or when I'm in Cork now, I pass by that house which we had sold it, family house. I look up at the window of that room and I say, "Lord, what you did for me there," you know, just a touch. But since that day, I want to go around to every atheist I could find and say, "Listen, God is real. He's watching over you. Every breath you breathe is his gift to you. Every drink of water, every day you open your eyes, he loves you incredibly, and someday you'll see him," you know. And anyway, I have this big, I think it's totally, and I look back now, my own days as an atheist, that's nuts, you know. You say there's all creation, there's a creator, there's creatures, and there's no creator. That is nuts. See, this table,
it's unscientific, isn't it?
Yeah, this table was, nobody made it. Like it just fell out, just the trees fell off the ground and it came together. It's not logic, you know. And my joy since then, most of my joy has been simply to try to relate to this glorious God, this beautiful God who's so merciful to me. And I went, after a few weeks, I met a friend of my grandmother's, and he said to me, "Do you go to Mass?" And I said, "No." He said, "It's about time, isn't it?" And he was just the right word at the right moment. I went to Mass the following morning to the parish, Ballinlough in Cork, and when I went in the door, I felt the Lord was really there. For the first time in my life, I was where Jesus is really here. And it's like he's saying to me, "Oh yeah, here you are. You know, I'm seeing you for a while." But I felt like as if the Lord said, "This is your home. You belong here." And I was delighted. There were, in the mothers are praying the rosary, a lot of, maybe 100 or more, praying the rosary. It sounded like music in my ears, you know, beautiful. Like just, I can't describe the effect. And every word that the priest said, the priest at that day was Jack Lynch's brother, the Taoiseach's brother, Charlie Lynch. And every word he said, I can still remember. And that was 1977. It was like, I could hear it for the first time. It's like God unblocked my ears. And I could say, that is beautiful. The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, the love of God, the communion of the Holy Spirit. Wow, that's what I want, you know. It was just, yeah, happy day.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
You can see it in your face.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's contagious, because I'm sitting here like a Cheshire cat. But so before you found faith, obviously just living like anybody does, I suppose. I read that you loved rock music.
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what bands or
all that stuff? Yeah, into anything. And I think I now, if I hear now, my favorite group at that time was called Jethro Tull. Maybe not everyone knows about that group.
No.
But when I hear their music now, I praise God for it, the glory of God, creation, and all the rest of it. But it kind of washed away my faith as well. I don't think it really helped to what helps you to believe in God, you know. At that time, I had something in my head was saying to me, get a Bible. So I went downtown, I got a Bible for £2 in those days, and I was reading the page at breakfast every morning. And I remember one morning, not long after that, I read the passage where Jesus was questioned, what is the greatest of all commandments? And hear, O Israel, you shall love the Lord your God. I was reading this. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. When I read those words, it had an effect on me that I was nearly floating off the ground. It was like sweet heaven to say I read 700 books because I was like reading lots of stuff, you know. I never in my life found a line so full of light as that God should say, just love God who loves you with all your heart, with all your soul. It just fascinated me that God could say that, and it made a huge effect on my heart, you know. So I felt through that the Lord is saying, well, Adrian, you never knew me, you never loved me, you never anything, but you start now, you know. Yeah. Start now. I was so happy. It's like if I won the lotto, it wouldn't have been as good. And it has remained since then probably the most inspiring line of my life. They're just, you know, when the time comes and I pop my clogs, the Lord will be saying, look at me and say, did you do it? I said, I tried everything I could. I tried, you know.
Many years from now, please God.
Yeah, everything is to love God for, like the beach, the sea waves, the friends, the Eucharist, the places you go, the people, experiences, the dark days when the Lord bails you out, the days of healing, the days of challenges, anything, everything. It's all a reason to love God. It's all fuel to praise, to thank, to trust, to struggle through, you know. And one thing I know since those times, when God takes a step into your life, he never goes away. We may stumble, we may disappoint the Lord, whatever it is, that he always a second chance and a third chance. And I often feel the Lord saying, come on, begin again, you know, do better. And he's always like your coach, like in a boxing match, you know what I mean? Saying, go on, you can do it, you know? And he believes in us. And he's so faithful. We're trying to be faithful, but God is super faithful and helpful. I think every day helpful, saying, look, those poor creatures, they can't do anything without me, you know. And so I think it's a contract you'd sign for free, not knowing the future.
Isn't it a powerful message though? Because there's people out there who are so lost and they're looking in all the wrong places and they're going down these dark paths in life, and it's drinking, it's drugs and politics and everything, these obsessions where actually they're looking for acceptance, they're looking for escape, they're looking for love. Yeah, and God is there for free.
Yeah, it is for free. It's true, yeah. I just wish we had a kind of I don't know, is there a way to kind of convey that to others, you know? I visit the houses with the Legion of Mary in my parish, and a young mother was angry. She was saying to me, I won't be back. And I talked away to her, explained a bit about my life. And I looked her in the eye as I left, and I said, you know, just don't you forget one thing. God loves you. And I meant it with all my heart, you know. And I'd like to tell the whole world, door to door, you know, because it's, as you say yourself, that's does anybody love me? I remember when I was in Africa, there was a little child whose mother had died of HIV, and she was abandoned. And she came to she was in the Cenacolo house being cared for by a sister from Cork, actually. And I heard the sister saying to her one day, "Does anybody love you?" They were washing socks outside my window. And she said, "No, sister, nobody loves me." And she said, "Why doesn't anyone love you?" And she said, "Sister, I don't know why nobody loves me." She was only about 5 or 6 years of age to think that, left on a doorstep by her mother. But I saw that sister loved her and helped her and trained her and talked with her and was like equal with her so beautifully that the little girl learned to love because she was loved. And I remember when I was leaving that house, I said to her, "Lucy, you're so beautiful when you love, And she looked at me with radiance and she says, "Yeah, sister, teaching me to love, I thought that was so nice,
Beautiful.
And
going back to when you were 22, Father, and where did you go from there when you had these sort of profound moments? What, was seminary far off from there, or was there a journey to go there yet?
Yeah. It was, of course. I remember talking to God and saying, "Lord, I loved every day the idea I can talk to you, I can come back and pray, And this was the best part of my day. I said, this is creative. I can say to you how I am and how it's going, and I sing, and I'll do anything for you. You're real, and I'll never ever doubt you again. And anything you want, just don't ask me to be a priest, okay?" I remember that was among the first discussions. But you wonder what's for you. You go along, you dialogue with God. I had no prayer group to go to. I went to Mass, and Mass is fantastic. I knew it was very real, but the prayer support didn't come, yet. And then I later on found some charismatic renewal groups and stuff like that, and stumbled on it.
Like the Life in the Spirit seminars.
Yeah,
you were at recently.
I was. Yeah. That's one of the big things, the Holy Spirit. I think, if you say that in those days the Holy Spirit came into my heart, I could see everything differently. I was working in Kerry in Derrynagh, Daniel O'Connell's ancestral home, and I remember walking on the beach there, seeing the big mountains, the Kerry Mountains. I was thinking, you made that, wow! And the sea rolling in, you made the sea, and there's fish out there, and every blade of grass, and it was all like I was seeing it first time in my life with the idea that you're pretty good at making things, you know what I mean, and praising God and everything. And because I was alone in my room when I had that conversion experience, I loved to be alone in rooms anywhere. I was in a caravan by the beach down there, but to be alone there was always God to talk to and God to relate to, sing to. There was the Bible to study. There was God to ask, make things happen in my life, anything that you want, And
It's funny you say that as well, because Sister Clara, Alone with Christ Alone, is her book, and I know that a conversion, hers was a lot of time alone spent with God. I know that my wake up call came in my room alone, and in my I gave a testimony and I used those words, alone with Christ alone, and I know John, similar with yourself. You were alone in your room. But I think
actually came from loneliness as well.
From loneliness. I think what kind of happens though is that God, it happens when you're alone, because it's about, I think you have to know yourself, really know yourself. And I think that's what it's about, getting to see how he sees you rather than how the world perceives you, or the preconceived ideas we have in our own mind. And I think that's why it's something that starts alone but grows into a community, which is such and I think the more you grow in faith, you need a community. For me anyway, and I know John has become like the big, like we have each other, which is amazing, because you don't always have that. But I think community is key for anybody who is, coming into faith. Like, there is a big community out there for them. But usually this journey starts alone, with Christ alone.
Yeah, yes. For me, it was a joy I remember saying to the Lord, I want to talk about you. I want to tell others about you. And therefore, when I found myself in a church as a deacon, for example, I felt such a joy that Lord, I can proclaim your word to people who are hungry for your word, That was sweet. I still struggle a bit with community because I'm not particularly good at it. Mm-hmm. My mother told me when I was a child, that she said, Adrian, all the children will be playing in the front lawn and you will be alone in the back lawn, in the back. And I have that in me still, Mm-hmm. But
introverted.
I do, yeah, absolutely. And I do see joy. Like when I'm in a Cenacolo house, for example, and you got 16 lads all in a healing process, and they're all discovering the gospel, and they're all coming into grace, and they're all in a state of grace after confession, and they all feel forgiven their past and all the rest of it, that God tears up the page and says, forget about it. Yeah, there's a joy there because Jesus is there, I suppose. Mm-hmm. That's it,
That's what I mean as well about community, though, because I would be a bit like yourself and would have always kind of been the one that kind of sat back and kind of, and it's contradictory because I'm an actress, but again, no one would have ever thought it. So what I mean is even like in mass, when you see like that's a community, but I don't mean like having to be surrounded by people all the time, because that's certainly not me. I don't have the battery power for it. I think, as I said there, like my community would be us. We don't, we're not.
But that feeling when you're in mass, surrounded by people, that's a great feeling, or like that Life in Spirit seminars, and people coming together and joy.
Seeing that.
There's something really special about that, isn't there?
And in the end, we're going to be in a community above.
That's the most
like they're going to someday.
Please God.
I'm going to look in the eyes with Claire Crocker and say, "Wow, it's nice to meet you," or to see Saint Therese, Saint Bernadette,
Patrick,
whoever it is, and they'll all be like, in a glorified state. That's going to be an ultimate community forever.
That's it.
So better like it.
Well. From hearsay, I think we would.
Yeah.
Bring us back on that journey, Father, because you're alluding to question a bit of your journey becoming a priest.
Yeah.
How? So were you many more years to go? What happened there?
Yeah, I was wondering really.
Really.
I was a teacher. I was an English teacher.
Right.
And every day in the classroom, I would know in my heart, this isn't your life's work, there. I couldn't put words in it, but I come home to my parents and it's not my life's work, even though it was all right. And I remember one of the lads in Cork said to me, "Sir, did you ever think of becoming a priest?" And I said, "Why? Make a crazy priest." And because I was always keen, like in the poetry or wherever it was, that God was spoken of and stuff, and I was, could see I was into that. And so in the end, just to make a long story short, I was struggling. I was like a fish on a hook, really. I wouldn't. If you want to, I will, but don't ask me. But, all the rest of it. And in the end, I remember going into a priest and vocations in Dublin. And I said to him, don't think I'm going to be a priest, but I just want to talk about it. And he said, yeah, let's talk about it. So we talked for an hour, and I felt this really heavenly peace for an hour. I was struggling for years with it, really struggling, and I had one attempt that failed and stuff like that. But at the end of the hour, I said, look, forget it. The Lord, it's like in my heart was saying, look, forget it. Just go with it and be the priest and proclaim the Lord and so on. So I went with it. I had a joy. I was 5 years in the seminary, and there was a room, an oratory with the Blessed Sacrament, and the priest said to us, you can go there anytime. You can open the door of the tabernacle and you can spend time in prayer. I saw joy there. I said, Jesus, you're real. It was like just a joy. I can't find it these days, but at those days, I was brimming with it. It's like, wow, that sense of Jesus present was stunning. And to this day, when I'm at Mass and I'm holding up the consecrated host and I'm saying, I remember the joy, it's like, it was just, wow. Yeah, it's a bit...
What age were you going into seminary?
35, and I was ordained at 40.
So you lived a bit.
I did, yeah.
But Father,
I wondered a bit.
There's a real there's a good thing about that, isn't there, though? Because, priests are spiritual leaders as well. It's like with psychologists, if you want to study psychology, you have to be 25 minimum. They won't accept you for any younger because you need to have life experience. I would say that's even more important as a priest,
Well, we just had somebody speak about like an authenticity in someone. But there's a real authenticity in you and how you have lived your life to where you are now that lay people can relate to. You can relate in a way, because usually when what preconceived ideas from the priesthood or whatever is that, yous are too far, yous are holier than thou, and you don't get normal light, and that's obviously not the truth. Because we're all human beings and we're all in this life. Either it's a struggle for everyone each and every day, as well as the happy moments. There is our up and down, and you're human. But I think that people forget that. That isn't it.
Can I say one thing about that? I wish I was 17 going in. Really? The reason is I would have been protected from a lot of the harmful stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Padre Pio was 15 when he became a Franciscan,
Wow.
And I think they were kind of shielded from, and he ended up, like Padre Pio, more savvy than anyone. He was more into anything, he was aware of everything in the world, Maybe there's that to it too. For myself, I had a lot of battles to fight. It's not like I had a lovely experience and I had this super appreciation of God, and I felt the love of God. But in the years later, what do you do now? You go back drinking with your rugby friends again? Do you go out, girls again? What do I do, Lord? I have to learn to live all over again. And there's a lot. And then the whole struggle, like someone into rock music and all the stuff that I was into. And the next thing you're thinking, I'll give my whole life to the Lord. It's like the boat turns right around, And I must say for myself, I found it very, very hard. I struggled. Tough. Yeah.
It was the cross that he gave you, though.
I felt that whether right or wrong, I don't know. I said to the Lord, pubs are out. I'm not going there. Because I went with my younger brother to a discotheque one time after that. I could feel the great love God had for everyone there, but I could feel him saying to me, Adrian, this is not for you anymore. Got to move on. It's a new life, and I'm, there's certain places that are whatever, So anyway, I struggled. Yeah, I really did. And I must say, I struggled also with church, because the Catholic Church, let's say my birthplace and my home church, and then some young people in Cork that I knew in a prayer group were becoming born again Christians, and they were talking about the praise and worship, and they were on another planet, and they were all Holy Spirit. They were even like in the streets talking to people about Jesus and open your heart to Jesus and so on. And my mother passed them by one day and she said, I did that long ago. But so I was really torn there, like saying, Jesus, is this the right church? Those guys seem a bit livelier, Yeah. They seem to be, they know every verse of the Bible, and they're saying this and they're saying that. And I was torn to pieces by that, saying, Jesus, do I have to leave my own church to find you? And I remember I prayed it, I struggled. And then one day I was reading the gospel, again in the same church in Cork, and it's the passage of St. Luke where it says, many will come using my name and saying, he is there, or I am here. Do not run after them. That phrase, do not run after them, solved all my problems, and I got great peace about it. So, Lord, thank you that you told me I don't have to leave your church to find you,
Yeah.
And afterwards, one of the born-again Christians came to my first parish, and he said to me, You know, he says, you Catholics have this most amazing reverence and devotion in the silence. He said, we don't have that. And I said to him, well, you got the praise and the worship. He says, yes, but this is the real, whatever it was, you know. And he started playing his guitar with the youth group and so on. Yeah, but I know that it's yeah. I went through that among other things. I also had a problem with eating.
Yeah, you don't look like now, Father.
Yeah. I started fasting, and I started fasting maybe seriously, you know, because in your fervor you want to make every sacrifice you want, and steak, chicken pieces and the whole lot were kind of off the table, you know. And I was eating plates of brown rice or whatever it was, and then fasting on nothing as well, and that became a binging, and that became out of order. And then the Lord put it back into order again, you know. I think we're like little toddlers learning to walk, and we fall and we get up, and he says, come on, you know.
Do you think, was that a part of this sort of energy that you had, thinking I'm 35 and I'm figuring out in a new life, then you're going to extremes? Is that so? That's sort of a side effect of that.
Yeah, our heart, we just go to little maybe unhealthy extremes. Yeah. You know, I mean,
reminds me of somebody.
Some of the things were a bit. You look back now, a wise person would say, Adrian, go easy. You know, my mother did say that to me.
A mother knows best, usually.
Yeah. It did take me, like every word in the Bible meant something. To honor your mother and your father meant that I became very obedient to them, or very hopefully honoring them more.
What age were you? You were ordained at 40. What year was that?
1995.
1995.
And I was sent to Aughrim Street Parish, Stony Batter, in Dublin.
I know it, yeah.
And happy days there. It's not what you do, it's what the Lord makes happen in your life. You know, what the Lord puts before you, you know, for a particular reason. You lend yourself to God, anything God wants to do. I remember I was saying that, Lord, anything you want, anywhere, you're God. What do I know, you know? And I'm happy to have done that. Yeah.
So, Father, 1995, that's about the time all the scandals start coming out. Is it?
Yeah, they did it about a year.
I'd say that must have rocked you, did it, Father?
Yeah. It was the saddest thing, because you spend your life wanting God to be glorified, loved, and known, particularly known, because you say, to know God is the sweetest thing. God is so good and so beyond all we ever imagined, you know. And therefore you say, my whole life, Lord, is to spread the fragrance of your name, to make you known and loved, and all the rest of it. And the next thing, when you get torpedoes hitting the boat like that, you say, Lord, who will believe anything that I say now? If that's the image, if that happened, you know. And my thoughts to God were, say, Lord, I belong to you, and I'm for you. And no matter what happens, if nuclear bombs start falling, I'm still for you. And whether it's successful or a failure, whether my words are, whether I can succeed to make you known and loved or not, I throw the dice that direction. Do you know what I mean? But what do you do? I think you take refuge a lot in prayer as well. And I'll tell you something else as well. I am not great. I don't listen to TV, because I find TV kills my prayer. Not avoiding that.
TV's even gone now, Father. It's more internet now, so that'll tell you how far you're past that.
It is.
Yeah.
You know, one night I remember telling the Lord, 10 to 11 tonight is a holy hour. I'm praying with you, and I'm not going to, you know, this is, I'd be praying all hours if I could, you know what I mean? I'd love to pray. But I ended up, someone said to me, Match of the Day is on, come on, we go and watch Match of the Day. And I kind of went there for a social reason, you know. And I remember feeling so bad afterwards, going to the Lord, saying, Lord, I'm tired now, and I'm offering you the leftovers, you know, rather than the best hours, quality time with God. for me, I don't have a TV in my house now, so I maybe hear less of scandals or stuff like that.
Sure.
But what to do but to pray? I suppose the most enlightened comment I heard about it was from Saint Teresa of Calcutta. She was asked about it, and she said, God is purifying his church. And I think what she meant was that God can't tolerate that to happen. If these souls are consecrated souls who speak in the name of God and act in the name of God, and therefore he lances the wound. And when you lance a wound, it's very painful. It really hurts. But he had to lance the wound to let it be known, let it be seen, and say, this cannot happen in my church. I would say since the year 2002, when I was at absolute worst in Boston, I would imagine that no priest of a new generation will offend God. It will be extremely careful to be right with God, particularly for the value of purity, for the virtue of purity. I think is God's favorite virtue, and Our Lady's favorite virtue, and so I would imagine. My hope before God is that it is very painfully healed. And I know it's going to take a long time for people to look at priests again and say, he has to be a carrier of the Holy Spirit. He has to have something of the holiness of God about him, But, and for the rest of it, I'm not the judge of anyone. And those priests who fell that way may have been horrendously grieved and cut to pieces in their own hearts by their own sins. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. I'm not see inside their hearts, but I leave it. I pray. The thing I love to do most of all is to pray. I don't think anything replaces prayer. And I have to keep leaving the rest to God and saying, Lord, but it's a good question to ask.
But isn't it, Father, we were just talking, because we did another podcast and we had Father Stephen on, our experience of the church now is such a different church than what, say, older people in generation, I'm not even talking about the scandals, but even the way, I suppose, attitude, and vibes and energy of the whole thing, and you'd hear this and hear that. But the new generation, I think it's coming off the back of what you said, that beyond a certain point in time, and they still became priests in a time where it became, one time it was the most popular vocation in Ireland to the most unpopular. So the ones who are coming up behind that, they're as brave as you can get, and they're doing it for all the right reasons. And we see it in the current church in Ireland. And, we are always saying to people, the church that you think it's not the church, it really is a different church, these days.
I think the love and mercy of God is what we're seeing in the priests that we've met and are surrounded by, and the pilgrimages that we go on. Whereas before, I think it was a wee bit, the wrath and the condemning and it was more forceful, even in a way whenever I was growing up and younger, and we keep talking about evangelization, and a lot of that was lost. I suppose what you said again when you were talking about the born agains and how they were and full of this spirit and this energy, and sometimes it was lacking, where I feel there is some sort of I don't know how to describe it, but there's something happening now. And I can feel it, and maybe I can't express it, but I can feel it. And I suppose it's very hard to express that feeling to others. But it comes from what I'm witnessing, from deep prayer, from receiving the sacraments. And this podcast has greatly helped us to be able to meet people like yourself who we're learning from, and hopefully through others, we can learn more and others can learn more.
I think there is nothing more beautiful in the world, and the more the world falls in love with God and discovers how beautiful you are, that the more lights shining, the less war we have, the less everything. Isn't that right? That's the secret, And the church is I love the church. Yeah. I love to be in the church, you know, and yeah.
I think for us, it's we go there not for a feeling. We go there to worship.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the difference. I think when we're talking about like born again Christians and everything, and they go and it's song and dance and it's a bit of feeling. But for us, it's not. We're there and it's God that's present, and we're here for you, to worship you, to love you, and that's what matters. That connection between the two. Maybe that's something to tap into.
Yeah. Father, why don't you tell us about your time away in South America and Peru, and what were you up to?
I went away and I ended up in this shanty town in the south of Lima, where it's a city of 6 million people, and is just shacks made out of old cardboard and plywood and rusty corrugated roof and all that. You know, very young people. No water. Just there used to be water lorries come around. You buy your water off the truck. We had 5 chapels packed with people, open to God, and we had movements of catechesis groups of families together, like young couples and families and stuff, learning the gospel, changing their lives. It was a lot happening. That was Peru, and Cenacolo community came there and started a house there. Then to be honest with you, I was kind of burnt out after 7 years there. It was real burnout territory. And I went to a monastery for 3 months in South Carolina. And I was just, they started their prayers at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
And they were chanting the Psalms, and they were silence. And I hardly talked to anyone for 3 months except God. Mm-hmm. And I was going around the garden. I was working as a gardener there. And I love that life now. I did offer to the Lord. I said, Lord, if you want me to stay here for life, I would, because it's like just you and God, you know. And the monks were all there chanting the praises of God 7 times a day and stuff. And the Lord never really seemed to say to me, Adrian, I wanted to stay here. But then I got a surprise email from Magnus MacFarlane of Mary's Meals, who are feeding the hungry in Africa, you know, and offering something about Liberia. So I remember saying, Lord, I never thought I'd go to Africa in my life, you know. It was a big surprise of God. So I ended up in Liberia. I went out actually with John Pridmore and Magnus MacFarlane, and I stayed there to do a project that failed. And I had an area parish of my own, which was grand, built new churches and all that, did a lot of stuff. I suppose in the end of the day, if you ask me for one thing that I remember from Africa, I mean, thousands of things, but one morning the sisters were doing a free medical clinic in our compound. And so all the poor people were coming with, you know, malaria, typhoid, whatever it was. And they brought me a man who had a tumor on his shoulder. I'd never in my life seen it. It was like the size of a football growing out of his shoulder. And he was 28 years of age, and he hadn't eaten for 2 weeks. And then I said to him, why did you not eat? He says, there's no hope for me. So I could see nobody had any idea what to do here. And I had absolutely was completely blank. And a girl said from the circle, from the group, she said, I used to help the nurses with the UN, and I could take them to town tomorrow to see. Now, there's no doctors in Liberia very much. You know, they're all gone to America. And there's no surgeons, hardly any. So anyway, I gave her $100, and she took Sam, this boy, to hospital the following day. Now, there's 2,000 people outside the hospital trying to get in. And you can hardly get in, you know, for the 6 doctors that are there. She came back at the end of the day. She said to me, Father, you won't believe this, but we were there and an American doctor passed us by and he saw the tumor. And he came over and he says, what's that? He looked at it And he says, I'm an American doctor. He says, and I'm here for 2 weeks on holidays. Come back tomorrow and I'll treat that. He spent 5 hours operating on it the following day, roots and all out. Said to the man, it'll be a long time before that ever troubles you again. And Sam is now driving a taxi around Monrovia. And I got my $100 back. Mm-hmm. But only God could do it, But you're there. You're kind of like a hinge on the door, or whatever, that you're there to help the people to, whatever. But if it's one person, that's important to God, And it's allowing God is always the principal actor, isn't that right? The actor.
Yeah.
God is always the one who causes things to happen. I could tell you other stories. Another day we were walking around a mud hut village. A woman was lying on the ground in her mud hut. The youth said, there's a woman lying down there in the thing. What was wrong with her? Her arm was swollen twice the size of normal with the infection. And she had nothing, no antibiotics, nothing, up to here. And if it goes into your heart, you're gone. So within a half an hour, we had her in the medical clinic. They lanced her infection wound. They squeezed out all the pus from her arm. And she was fine in about a week, let's say. And she was fine. I said to her, why were you lying there? She says, I thought it was my time. She was only 50. Fine, strong lady, But I thought tremendous virtue, acceptance of everything, whatever. But just you're wandering around the village and you see that. Or another child was like a skeleton. I can't describe being washed in a bucket. This child was maybe 2 to 3 years of age. Really, the worst you'd ever see. And I said, what's wrong with your child? Don't know. So we took the child to Mother Teresa's sisters in the middle of the city. And the mother, they said, okay, we take the child and the mother for 6 months for a treatment. So they took the child and the mother for 6 months. After 6 months, that child was like, I won't say like Mike Tyson, but she was strong, And just because you're there, things can happen, And you lend yourself to God. So things like that, I suppose,
And in the Philippines then? You're in the Philippines,
yeah,
right?
The Philippines.
So that's what Duarte, is that policy gone now?
Duterte, yeah. He's replaced as president now.
I remember seeing him in a speech, didn't he actually say that anybody can kill these drug addicts, that a civilian could kill it, and actually what ended up happening was many got killed that weren't even drug addicts because it was an excuse to kill them.
Yeah.
I mean, people think that there are political leaders around the world that it's an extreme, but he must be the most extreme of recent times.
He boasted of killing people himself, and
that's right. Yeah.
He yeah.
Wow.
So
you were over there under his reign then?
By the time we were there was 12,000 had died, and it went up to 20,000 in the end. And the house we opened up, Cenacolo House, was there at the countryside. To be honest with you, I was there looking for land for Cenacolo alone. And I was wandering around, and I hardly knew where I was staying the following day. And I was saying, Lord, I'm here in the Philippines. I know nobody, and I'm looking for land for a community. You know what I mean? It was like unusual. And the next thing, there'd be a priest somewhere. I'd say, come and stay here. And then the Franciscans are over there. And I spent 3 months looking for land for Cenacolo House, and nothing happening. I was offered places where you couldn't swing a cat, or I was offered places that cost like $1 million or whatever, and nothing was working for me. I was saying, I'm going home in an airplane out of failure again. It's not going to work. And to Italy, which is the headquarters of Cenacolo. And then one day someone said to me, Father, there's a big shrine of Our Lady up on the north of the island, very famous. 10,000 people go there every weekend, and Our Lady appeared there 400 years ago. And it clicked with me. I went up there, and I was praying at the shrine to Our Lady, and I was at Mass at 25 young priests, lots of young priests there. And I was saying to Our Lady, it's not working very well for me, I can't find the land. And nothing like a failure to make your prayer sharpened up,
Mm-hmm.
So after the Mass, I saw Socrates written on the wall in the sacristy, which is the Archbishop Socrates Villegas. I said, I have his phone number. Someone told me he's a great bishop and the most famous bishop in Southeast Asia. So I texted him. I said, Archbishop, this is Father Adrian, and I'm here representing Cenacolo community for the healing of the addicted, and described all the mission of Cenacolo. And 5 minutes later, pop, a reply. I'm coming to see you. I'm not far away. I'm with the seminarians on doing 7 churches, visits of 7 prayers and 7 churches for Lent. And an hour later, this famous, very saintly Archbishop, he's very radiant, seemed to have everything to me, very exceptional person, walked in the door and said, how are you? I showed him photographs of Cenacolo, the healing of addictions and how the rosary and all the rest is there. And he was saying, we really need this. I says, I have a piece of land just for you. And through that's where the house now is flourishing. But I always felt at the last minute, Our Lady could see I was struggling and not working, and Our Lady helped me. I felt that very much. Wow. And they actually have just recently opened another house in the same site, a new house, and it means a lot to the lads who are there discovering God's life in that community,
Wow.
So
that's incredible in a place where that law was in place as well.
Yeah.
Where people were being executed and that happened.
Yeah.
Wow.
When we went over there, we were on TV, we were on the radio, we were everywhere. And hopefully that we were saying there's another way, and this whole God's way is not that way. God does not shoot people in the streets,
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. In Liberia,
and it's surprising too. The Filipinos are so wonderful people. They are open to God. It's a naturally believing country. Catholic churches are filled every hour. People are flocking to Mass. Like, I'd be older than everyone there, and yet they had that kind of a president. He's like the antithesis of a Filipino,
Yeah, I've met quite a few Filipinos in my life, and they're very devout and very warm people.
They are,
and good crack,
They are, yeah.
In Liberia, weren't you there during the virus, the Ebola?
Ebola, I was, yeah.
So what was that like? Because that was crazy.
Ebola is a virus that gets into your blood, destroys the small blood vessels, and it kills you in 2 weeks. It killed 90% of those who got it in the beginning. You could get it by handshake. So there wasn't much sign of peace at Mass at that time, you can imagine. But an American professor of infectious diseases came to visit us, and he said, this is going to kill 2 million people. And he says, it's going to go on for 2 years. This is a terrible thing, And the whole country of Liberia, and Liberia is only the size of Ireland, and the whole country got on its knees. Catholic, Protestant, you name it, everyone was praying. Women were praying in the streets, families were praying. And the moment that this national prayer crusade began, and the telephone companies were texting their customers saying, today at midday, let the entire nation pray at a particular hour. So the whole country was praying to the Lord, Lord, help us and save us from this Ebola. Immediately the prayer campaign began, the numbers went plummeting down. And within 11 months, it stopped. People were celebrating in the streets that it went, and only a small fraction of the expected number died of Ebola because of the prayer, a national prayer crusade. I would say this about the Liberian people: they put their faith in God. They really did turn to God greatly, and they saw the result.
So when that hits and you're there, surely the first instinct is, get me out of here.
Yeah.
Well, what was your thinking?
I do admit, I did. I was. it was a bit scary in the beginning. And we in Cenacolo, we were 16 adults, 8 in the girls' house, sisters and girls, and the boys' house were about 8. And we decided we would do a holy hour each before Jesus, from 4 o'clock in the morning right through to 10. Each one had their hour. And everyone said that it took the fear away. Jesus was reassuring. We felt the peace of Christ in our hearts. There was no more fear. There was a great unity in the house at that time. And the Ebola came 2 miles up the road, but didn't come over our fence, So the people of Cenacolo community that I was with at the time they offered tickets to go home. They were phoned from Italy, from the priest director, said, look, your tickets are there, you can come home. And they were looking after 45 street children at the time, who were including that little girl I mentioned, Lucy. And these children had come from, literally wandering the streets and trying to get little fruit off a fruit stall to survive on, And I said to the first 2, I said, your tickets are there to go home. And they said to me, I can't go, because if we go, these children are lost on the streets in the middle of Ebola, I'm not going. So the second couple came, and they were engaged to be married. And they said, one of them said to me, when I was young, I risked my life for crazy things, but now I have a chance to risk my life for something worthwhile. I'm not going. So all 16 of them said that they would stay freely and give their life.
And what was your reason for staying?
My reason for staying? Well, a priest is like saying, if the Lord calls you in the morning, you go, wouldn't you? Say, I'm all right, Lord. You say that, I didn't, I did, early on, I did feel all right, like jumping the fence, but then that's just a little reaction that I think you get.
That's a human
balanced
reaction.
out again,
It's the human reaction.
Yeah.
Scary time, though.
I won't say that we're not heroes, I tell you. Scary, yes, certainly. Yeah. And someone said to me one time, well, if I got Ebola, it's my ticket to heaven. It's an interesting way to look at it, isn't it,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So when you've been to all the places around the world that you've been, and you've seen how faith has pulled people through, and then you come to Ireland, and we haven't been hit with a lot of the same crises, but we've been hit with other aspects of things. But we see the faith dwindle here, and we can freely go to our churches, and we have no persecution on us, so to speak, the way that Africa would have, and all these countries that are suffering, and yet they risk their lives to go to God and to be with Him. How do you go from a place like that, where the faith is kind of on fire, to come home to Ireland and see it how it is today? How does it make you feel?
I feel this is the biggest mission of all, in some ways. And I feel glad to be here at this time, to be, I think Charles Dickens once said, it was the best of times and the worst of times. And for Ireland, it is like that. People have everything in Ireland at the moment. If I could, I'd love to take everyone to Liberia for a week. They would never complain again.
Yeah.
There was a man in my parish in Liberia, Mr. Chappie. He was very old, and he was mostly blind. Could just walk along the side of the road, just barely. And he wearing old flip-flops and rags, really. He was so poor. And he spent all day long in the church praying, talking to God, saying rosaries, whatever he was doing. But he was all day long praying. Wouldn't accept any food from me, because he said I'd pray better when I'm fasting. And at the end of the day, he'd say, okay, I'll go now. And he'd eat at home, But he was rich in faith. And people come to my parish, say, I want to spend 3 days praying and fasting in your church, or 5 days, because I want to ask it or something. God is taken very seriously there, You come home to Ireland, and I think we had a famine of potatoes in 1845, and now we have a famine of faith. But I think if people realize how beautiful that is, I see people come to my own parishes in Mulhuddard now. A lady came, she was saying, oh, it's beautiful to reconnect with God again. I'm feeling peace in my heart and I'm feeling something, you know. It's lovely to get people to get that. And Father John Regan in the next door parish as well, lots of young people coming there saying, I realise I really need God. I don't want to live without God anymore, you know. So I'm glad to be in the battle, you know, glad to be part of it. Mm.
You know, Aughrim Street in 1995, just thinking, that's a whole other kind of battle too. That's like, you know, epidemic heroin going down. Was that a big thing around 1995? Surely that's kind of the peak of drug addiction around Dublin City and that. But what was that like, Father?
I remember every Mass that I remember clearly thinking to myself, I have no answer to that. And every single Mass that I was saying, deliver us, after the Our Father, deliver us, Lord, from every evil. And in my heart I was saying, deliver us also from that. Because I hadn't a clue what to do about it. And then I was in Medjugorje, maybe the year later, and I met Sister Elvira of Cenacolo. And I think that was like God saying, this is a healing, one of the healing aspects, you know. So then we said to Elvira, come to Ireland. And she said, yeah, I'll come to Ireland. And then within a year, she was accepting a house in Knock, a farm in Knock, which is still the Cenacolo farm. As I speak, there are 17 lads there at the moment, all blossoming in their faith and in their new life, you know. But so I felt that, that, to be honest with you, it's one of those things like Ebola or anything else. You say, I don't know what to do, you know, no idea. And you're just surrendering to God and whatever, you know.
But the prayer was such a important part of it, because that's what got you to Cenacolo then, because that's your response to it, I suppose.
Prayer is your way of saying to the Lord, I surrender myself, a pencil in your hand, you know, do with me what you want, you know.
Pencil in your hand.
And saying, you know, I remember in the seminary, one of the professors didn't vote for my ordination. He was not in favour of my being ordained a priest for some reason, and he was a professor that I really liked a lot. But he's gone to God now anyway. But he said Adrian is very weak. That was his comment to the other professors, who I was told by one of them. And I think that's the way, you know. You are very weak. And the Lord can take you and use you, and you know, Lord, fragile instrument, we're nothing, you know. One of my friends in the seminary passed in the corridor one day, said to me, Crowley, you're a piece of muck. And I laughed, you know, because what are we before God anyway? Yeah. But the fact that God would take you, weakling as you are, and say, okay, you're my priest, and I can do something with you. Even for one person, or for some of the best times of my life have been confession. Like in Medjugorje, for example, people sobbing their heart out, pouring out this, you know, the sins of a lifetime, and you could nearly touch the healing power of God there. You know, it's not you're doing it. You're only saying, "I absolve you from all your sins." You're speaking out in God's name. You know. It is so beautiful that way, you know. In the end of the day, when my time comes and I go there, I'd like to meet people. They say, well, thank you that you helped me on my way here, you know. Yeah. We're on our way. Where are we going, you know? It's got to be, it's there, isn't it, you know?
With the confession, Father, was that like, does that come close to that initial feeling that you had? That feeling of excitement, that feeling of...
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
You're right.
Does it?
Yeah.
Because I've seen you light up in the same way there.
You know that...
God's there.
It's really, like, it opens your eyes to say this confession is as I saw you in your podcast saying that it's just tangible, merciful, wiping the slate clean, someone being fit, Snow White. You should be Snow White after it, That's pretty good. Don Bosco was called out of the confession box one night by the students that were there. The church was dark. He said, look at the boy praying at Our Lady's altar. And he looked, and the boy was shining light from him, And he said, that's just a soul in the state of grace. He made confession, so he's in a state of grace, and his radiant light from him, So
for us, there's no better feeling. I remember myself and Danielle. There was we were going through a bit of spiritual warfare, I would say.
Yeah.
One night, and we both went to confession together, right? And the way the conversation was beforehand, no matter what any of us said, it would have never worked to find a solution to the problem in our conversation.
Yeah.
When we both get out of the confession, which we're going to later on after this, nothing mattered anymore. We just laughed. Really? We laughed. And we were laughing at each other.
Yeah.
And we were laughing at our previous conversation like it was nothing, because there was such grace and clarity. It's so powerful. And it's actually really sad to see that it's probably the most underestimated and underused sacrament nowadays.
Yeah.
Because you don't, even like Father, like I was just yesterday trying to Google masses in Belfast, up in Belfast, and Belfast have strong enough faith in comparison to the rest of the countries, say. And it's hard to get a confession on every day, so like it's so.
Asked, obviously we can message a priest, but I don't like to do that, even though it'd be more than welcome, especially a friend of ours, Father Darn. I know we'd be only too happy, but again, I prefer to go in the times, because we know how busy, especially when you're running a parish,
doing lots of other stuff.
Lots of other stuff, so we always try and get it when it's actually set times, but there is a set time today, so we'll be going to.
But if it's such a powerful sacrament, and if people are going and they're spending so much money in therapy, and they're and again, not bad talking therapy, because there's definitely there's some power to it, and there's some use for it. But I'm of the belief the only thing that can truly heal you is God.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that can heal you. You think you can get a plaster from therapy and stop the blood from gushing out of you, but it's going to fall off eventually. And I think that confession, I mean, the problem solves when you go in and you come out. That state of grace, it's the best saying ever, the state of grace.
There's a story told about St. Margaret Mary that her confessor was Claude Le Colombier. He's now a saint, right? A Jesuit. He was, she was saying to him, Jesus appeared to me and he had a sacred heart, and he said this to me. He said, I love the world and all the rest. And what does the spiritual director say to that? He said, well, if Jesus is appearing to you, ask him to tell you my sins. So she went away anyway, and the next time that they met, he said, well, I asked Jesus to tell you my sins. And what did he say? He said, you confess them all. But he said to tell you this. And she told him the secrets of his life, certain secrets that nobody could know.
Yeah.
And he really knew that Jesus was superior, but they don't exist anymore. St. John Vianney said about people who go to confession that the sin, once confessed, does not exist anymore. Therefore, it should not come back to the memory. You shouldn't think, 10 years ago I did that. Because you confessed it. It's not on God's slate anymore. So if God don't remember it, why would you remember it, Yeah. But we do remember it. That's the problem.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I met another use of just the confession when I was with a priest recently. I actually just asked the priest for advice after the confession.
Yes.
Because there was a situation where I allowed myself to get emotional, angry, and it was because of a certain reason. And at the end, I just asked him for advice, and the advice was great advice, which set about a chain of events. There were a number of God incidences that led to something really powerful of late. So a little bit of advice out there for people. Ask your priest for advice too. And obviously there's a spiritual director element aside of that, but I got good use out of that confession.
Yeah. And that's why I think one time I was hearing Confessions for You 2000, and it was hours, I think it was, and a girl brought me a cup of tea and a bun or something like that. It was so thoughtful of her because I just heard her confession, and next thing she came back with a snack, and she said to me, "Don't you get tired?" And I never get tired because the energy of God is in it.
Yeah,
it's a moment when it's not you, it's Jesus. You know what I mean? You're just what does it say? You want to be the glove on the hand of Jesus, you know. But yeah, I was glad of the cup of tea, but I still had the energy to go on. You know?
We're conscious of your time, Father, but before we go, maybe if you could just touch on Medjugorje a bit, because I actually, first when I saw you was you being interviewed with Tom Medjugorje.
Yeah, yes.
Shout out to Tom Medjugorje. If anybody's looking for any Catholic content out there and replace some of the maybe negative stuff online with some of the positive, Tom Medjugorje on YouTube is a great channel where he does testimonials with people, priests, with lay people, with people who get conversions over Medjugorje. So just tell us a bit about your experience in Medjugorje and what it means to you.
Yeah, well, I went to Medjugorje, and my mother sent me to Medjugorje as a birthday present in 1987. I wasn't a student yet.
Very early on then, yeah.
And I could see it was a kind of a spiritual gold mine, you know. I've had lovely experiences there at times, and I've met people who've been physically healed there. I met Maria Mann. She went there in a wheelchair 3 years ago. She had muscular wastage for 9 years. She had, she was bedridden for months on end and with pain, and she was healed. She's walking now. She's assistant manager of Radio Maria in Dublin. I've met people spiritually healed there, tremendous spiritual healing, and so on. So I think that it fascinates me really when I read about Fatima, for example, about the children describe Our Lady, and she opened her hands and light shining from her hands, and the words so inspiring and so on. That's a big medicine for the world, I think, and I struggle a bit with Our Lady in the beginning, was like all focused for God. I was wondering what's Our Lady's role in it, but we're, the more I see it, all generations call Our Lady blessed. She is the Almighty, still working miracles for her 2,000 years later. People will be going to heaven because of Medjugorje. Loads of souls will be saved because of Medjugorje. People will love Jesus more because of Medjugorje. People get the slate cleaned, like millions every year. It's a spiritual gold mine, and I often recommend it to people. I say, listen, do go, and I've seen lots of people that their life has been how would you say?
Vitalized.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Redone, So I would be thankful, and I would have a real, I hear from so many of the sayings like that Our Lady is so this and Our Lady is beautiful like that, So, yeah, I think that's a great plus for the church at the moment.
Brilliant.
That's amazing. Now, obviously, this is the episode to bring us into the new year, which will be 2026. If we could leave the viewers with a hopeful message, I suppose, for the year ahead, would you mind leading us into the year? And with your book also that you shared with us, Well,
this little book is called 90,000 Reasons to Love God. And if we do anything in the year, is it so hard to love God? God gives us the gift of a year, 226, and we can love God each day of the year, serve God each day of the year. You can wash the dishes for the love of God, and love of God comes from prayer. If you love someone, you spend time talking to them. You love to talk to them. You love to, where are they, to be with them and so on. And therefore that thirst, I'd say prayer, St. John Vianney said that the two wings in the spiritual life, prayer and love. So therefore prayer, a love of God, and also God puts in our world around us all the people we meet and stuff like that, to love them too in God's name. That's the chance. The reason you're living with a family, the reason you're together, that God gives you this person to love them, care for them, forgive them, whatever it is, you know what I mean? And I think that 90,000 reasons to love God. That's
amazing. Thank you so much, Father.
Thanks, Father. We appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
Thank you to all of our podcast viewers for sticking with us this year, and please come along for the journey in 2026. We wish you a blessed and beautiful new year.
God bless.